"What the hell are you doing in his room?" Gregory Hunter's voice cracked through the air like a whip. Maya Williams froze, kneeling on the carpet with the 2-year-old boy in her arms. Her voice trembled. "Please, sir. He was hurting himself. I was only trying to help." "I gave strict orders," Gregory barked, stepping closer. "You don't go near my son. You don't touch him. You don't speak to him. Are those instructions too complicated for you?" Maya's heart pounded. A few minutes earlier, she had heard the sound soft at first, then wild and sharp, the sound of a child breaking. Jacob had been in a fit again. The walls had echoed with his small fists hitting the crib, his horse crying, the thuds of thrown toys. The housekeeper, Mrs. Blake, was downstairs and hadn't heard. Maya dropped her cleaning rag and ran. When she entered, Jacob was crouched in the corner, rocking back and forth, eyes wide, his little fingers digging into his own hair. She had seen this before with her younger brother Isaiah, years ago, when his world tilted out of control. So she did what she had once done then. She sat on the floor, slow and quiet, and told a story. "There was a little boy who lost his way," she whispered, her voice trembling but gentle. "He looked for his mom every night in the stars. Sometimes, when he closed his eyes, he could still feel her hug him." The boy's cries softened into hiccups. His eyes, wet and vacant, found hers. Maya smiled through the ache in her chest. "You miss your mama, don't you?" Jacob blinked, as if the words reached him in a language he almost remembered. Then, cautiously, he touched her cheek, small, trembling fingers tracing her skin. It was the first time anyone in the house had seen him touch another human being without panic. And that was the exact moment Gregory Hunter stormed in. Now, the boy was calm and half asleep against her shoulder. But Gregory's anger filled the room like fire. "Put him down," he shouted. "You're lucky he didn't hurt you. You think this is some kind of charity?" Maya shook her head, still holding Jacob. "He wasn't angry, sir. He was scared. He was remembering his mother. Enough." Gregory's voice cut through her plea. "You think you can psychoanalyze my son because you've cleaned a few houses? Do you have any idea how dangerous this is?" "He just needed someone to stay," she whispered. "You're done here. Get your things and leave." The words hit her harder than any slap could. "Please, Mr. Hunter," she said quickly, desperate now. "I need this job. I can't go back home empty-handed. Please don't fire me. I swear I didn't mean any harm. He needed someone, that's all." Gregory turned away, jaw tight, refusing to look at her. "You had no right to touch him. Security will handle your paperwork." Maya's eyes stung. She lowered Jacob into his crib, careful not to wake him. He shifted, clutching the blanket she'd tucked around him, his tiny face peaceful for the first time in months. She brushed a tear from her cheek before speaking again. "I know you think you're protecting him," she said softly. "But sometimes walls don't keep people safe, they just make the house colder." Gregory froze for half a second but didn't turn. "Get out," he muttered. Maya stepped past him, her head low. Mrs. Blake stood at the end of the hallway, watching in silence, wringing her apron. As Maya walked by, the older woman caught her arm gently. "He's not a bad man," she whispered. "He just hasn't forgiven the world yet." Maya nodded, unable to speak. She walked down the long marble staircase, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Gregory stayed behind. The door clicked shut behind her. And for the first time in hours, the house was quiet again. He exhaled, rubbing his temples. Jacob slept, thumb tucked against his lips, his small chest rising and falling steadily. The boy hadn't slept without medication in weeks. Gregory stared at him, disbelief and guilt twisting inside his chest. He walked closer, lowering himself to the carpet. There were scratches on the wall, tiny crescents from Jacob's fingernails and broken crayons scattered like forgotten thoughts. He reached out to pick up one of the blue ones. On the paper beside it was a shaky circle, scribbled through. In the corner, a faint smudge like the shape of a woman's handprint. He swallowed hard. Maya's words replayed in his mind. He was remembering his mother. Gregory shut his eyes. The image of Anna, his wife, her laughter, the way she'd hum lullabies flashed behind his eyelids. She'd died when Jacob was 6 months old, when their private plane went down over the Rockies. Only Jacob survived. Gregory had built his fortune by controlling chaos, by predicting every possible variable, but grief was the one algorithm he couldn't solve. Now, a stranger had walked in, touched that chaos, and calmed it. He looked back at his son. For the first time in nearly a year, Jacob's face was peaceful. The boy's fingers twitched, as if searching for the warmth that had just left the room. Gregory sat there for a long time, staring at him. He didn't know whether he was more angry at Maya or at himself. Downstairs, Maya waited in the kitchen, clutching her canvas bag. "Mrs." Blake approached quietly with an envelope. "He says you'll be paid for the full week." Maya blinked back tears. "I don't want his money. I just wanted to help." The older woman sighed. "Sometimes men like Mr. Hunter don't know the difference between help and pity. But I saw what you did up there. That boy hasn't been that quiet since the funeral." Maya nodded faintly. "He's not broken," she said. "He's just scared." Mrs. Blake smiled sadly. "And so is his father." Maya turned toward the door, pausing only once. "If he ever lets someone stay long enough to listen," she said softly, "tell him Jacob's trying to speak. He just doesn't have words yet." Outside, the cold Connecticut air bit her cheeks. The mansion stood tall and silent behind her, its windows glinting like distant eyes. Somewhere inside, a little boy was dreaming, and a man was realizing too late that the first warmth in his house in years had just walked out the front door. Inside the nursery, Jacob stirred, murmuring softly in his sleep, a sound no one heard but the walls themselves. The mansion was quieter than usual the next morning, as if it, too, held its breath after the storm from the day before. Pale October sunlight crept through the high-arched windows, painting streaks of amber across the hardwood floors. Even the walls seemed to retreat into stillness. No footsteps, no voices, only the occasional groan of old wood settling into silence. Gregory Hunter sat alone at the long dining table, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hand. He hadn't slept much, though his bedroom was on the opposite end of the house. His thoughts had been held hostage all night by the image of his son curled against that woman's chest, peaceful, trusting, unafraid. Across from him, a single high chair remained untouched. No breakfast had been served. No one had dared bring it up. Not after what happened. He'd meant to call someone, the agency, maybe, to explain what had occurred. But when he sat at his desk and stared at Maya Williams' file, he found himself doing nothing. Her file was thin. No formal child development training. No college degree, just years of experience in homes like this one, though none quite so cold. Gregory sipped his coffee, staring into the backyard through the tall glass doors. The maple trees were turning crimson. Jacob loved that color. Or, rather, he reacted to it. Sometimes with quiet fascination, other times with screams. He hadn't screamed when Maya held him. He hadn't screamed when she whispered to him. That detail clung to Gregory like a burr under his skin. "Sir?" Mrs. Blake's voice was soft as always, but not apologetic. "Would you like some eggs this morning?" "No," he said, still watching the trees. "She left early. Didn't even wait for the agency car," the older woman added after a moment. Gregory nodded slightly, not answering. The memory of Maya's eyes, full of fear and quiet defiance, came back. Her words echoed faintly. "He's not broken, he's just scared." It had angered him at the time. Now, it just stayed. "He didn't wake last night," Mrs. Blake said. "First time in 3 weeks." Gregory turned toward her slowly. "You're certain?" She nodded. "I checked on him at 2. Still asleep." Hand clutched the corner of her scarf. Gregory said nothing. His chest tightened. He hated how much weight her absence seemed to carry, how much his son had noticed. Mrs. Blake cleared her throat gently. "Sir, I don't mean to overstep, but you should know when Miss Williams left, she didn't take the money. The envelope's still on the counter." That gave him pause. "She didn't?" "No, sir. Said something about not taking money for trying to do the right thing." Gregory looked down at the untouched breakfast place in front of the high chair. The silver spoon gleamed under the morning light. He hadn't noticed it was there. Mrs. Blake had set it, as she always did, out of habit. A bitter smile touched his lips. Habit was stronger than truth. Jacob cried again at 8:15, right on schedule. Gregory stood and walked upstairs for the first time in weeks. He usually let the nannies or Mrs. Blake handle it. He wasn't good at comforting. Wasn't good at anything that required warmth. But now, for reasons he didn't yet understand, he walked. Jacob sat in the middle of his crib, blanket tangled around his legs, face flushed from screaming. His fists pounded against the rails, not hard, but with a steady rhythm, his way of expressing confusion, of trying to regulate himself. Gregory froze in the doorway. The room still held a faint trace of lavender. Maya's touch hadn't left yet. He stepped closer, slowly, trying not to trigger the boy. "Jacob," he said quietly, unsure of what would happen. The child turned his head. No smile, no fear, just wide, alert eyes. Gregory raised a hand instinctively, unsure of what he meant to do. Jacob's gaze followed the motion, but he didn't flinch. "Not yet. Daddy's here," Gregory murmured. The words sounded foreign, rusty. Jacob's eyes shifted. Then, without warning, he lifted one hand and touched the blanket near him. His little fingers wrapped around a corner of blue fabric, Maya's old cleaning cloth. He brought it to his cheek and closed his eyes. Gregory watched as his son rocked gently, breathing slowing. The tantrum passed not with medicine, not with music, not with distraction, but with memory. The cloth smelled like her. He stayed there for minutes, maybe longer, watching his son hold on to the only thing that reminded him of the woman who hadn't been afraid to stay. That afternoon, Gregory went back to his study. The room was immaculate, untouched. The smell of old paper and leather-bound contracts clung to the air. His desk was polished, his laptop open, but he couldn't concentrate. He pulled Maya's file again and flipped it open. There were no references from elite families. No recommendations from early childhood centers. Just a note from a family in Macon, Georgia. She was the only one our boy would sleep next to. "No." Gregory exhaled and leaned back. He remembered once, long ago, when Anna was alive, she'd said, "Children don't respond to credentials. They respond to connection." And what had he done? He'd thrown that connection out the door. He ran his fingers through his hair and stood, pacing. He didn't know what he was going to do, but for the first time in months, he knew what he shouldn't have done. At the agency's downtown office, Maya sat in the waiting room, shoulders stiff, lips pressed tight. She wore the same navy sweater she'd worn the day before, now creased and clinging to the scent of antiseptic cleaner. The manager hadn't called her in yet. A middle-aged man in a striped tie was filling out paperwork nearby. She tried not to look nervous, but it was impossible. This was her last shot. One more termination, and she wouldn't be placed again, not in Fairfield County. She had $47 to her name. Rent was due in 6 days. She wanted to cry but refused. The receptionist approached. "Miss Williams?" Maya stood, smoothed her skirt, and followed. As she passed the lobby window, her eyes caught a familiar car parked outside. A black Lincoln Continental. The one she remembered seeing from the upstairs window of the mansion. Gregory Hunter sat inside, unmoving, staring straight ahead like a man facing a boardroom full of judgment. Her steps faltered. He looked up, and their eyes met. If you felt for Maya or Gregory, hit like and comment where you're watching from. You might find someone nearby feeling the same. The door to the agency's waiting room creaked softly as Maya stepped out, her heart pounding like the bass line of a song she didn't want to dance to. Her hands gripped the strap of her worn canvas bag as she stared at the black Lincoln idling at the curb. The windows were slightly tinted, but she could see him clearly, Gregory Hunter, sitting in the driver's seat, both hands on the wheel as if he were still deciding whether to turn the key and drive away. She took a breath and walked, not toward the car but past it. She couldn't afford hope. Not now. Not after everything. Not when eviction was 3 weeks away, and her fridge at home held 2 apples, a half stick of butter, and prayers. But the window rolled down. "Maya, His voice was quieter than it had been in the hallway, almost hesitant, no longer razor sharp, but frayed at the edges. She paused but didn't look at him. "Sir, if you're here to finish yesterday's lecture, I'd rather you not." "I'm not." He cleared his throat. "I came to talk." Maya turned her head slightly. "Talk or explain why I was fired for comforting a crying child. His jaw tightened. I made a mistake. That was new. She turned fully now, arms crossed. You made a decision, Mr. Hunter. Not a mistake. He sighed and opened the door. Will you get in the car? I have a bus pass. I'll drive you home, he said, trying to sound firm, but the note of guilt in his voice cracked through the authority. She studied him, then nodded once. I don't live in Greenwich. That a problem? Not at all. She climbed in. The interior smelled like leather and some kind of expensive cologne that clung to the seats like old money. The silence between them stretched thin as Gregory pulled into traffic. I didn't know, he said finally, eyes on the road. Didn't know what? That he calmed down because of you. I thought, he faltered, gripping the wheel. I thought you'd startled him, that you were another stranger, ignoring instructions. And when I said he was scared, not dangerous, I didn't listen. Maya looked out the window, jaw tight. He wasn't trying to lash out. He was asking for help. Children with trauma don't always have the words. Gregory nodded slowly, eyes heavy with something between shame and awakening. He held your scarf while he slept last night. That caught her off guard. He did? He hasn't done that with anyone. Not even me. Silence. The trees blurred past, golden and tired from the season. Gregory glanced at her. I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking now. Will you come back? Maya exhaled. For how long? Until the next misunderstanding, or until a neighbor takes a photo and sends it to a gossip site. You'll have a contract, full protection, no overstepping boundaries. I'll make it right. Maya hesitated. I don't care about contracts. What do you care about? She met his gaze then. That little boy in the blue pajamas who looked at me like I was the first thing in his world that made sense. He said nothing for a while. The car moved in silence through the narrow streets of her neighborhood. When they reached her building, a modest 3-story complex with peeling paint and a porch swing held together by hope and rust, she turned to him. You can come in, she said, but only if you're ready to stop managing your son like an asset and start seeing him as a child. Gregory nodded. That's fair. Inside her apartment, the scent of vanilla candles lingered in the air, blending with lemon cleaner and laundry soap. Maya's kitchen was small but spotless, the living room tidy with a stack of library books on the coffee table. He stood awkwardly near the door, too tall for the space. I wasn't expecting a visit, she said, half a joke, half a warning. I wasn't expecting to make one, he replied. She poured him a glass of water from a ceramic pitcher. No bottled water, no ice cubes. Just water, like real people drink it. Gregory looked around, eyes catching on a photograph on the shelf. A boy, about 7, with bright eyes and the same high cheekbones as Maya. Your brother? She nodded. Isaiah. Where is he now? Gone, she said softly. Car accident. 2 years ago. I raised him from when he was 5. He had sensory issues. Sound, texture, even hugs, everything overwhelmed him. But he loved bedtime stories. And peanut butter. Gregory's throat tightened. I'm sorry. So am I. He took a sip of the water. It felt heavier than wine. You looked at Jacob yesterday, Maya said, but I don't think you saw him. He frowned. What do you mean? You saw a liability. A problem. A child who embarrassed you. But what I saw was a boy grieving. Not just for his mother, but for connection. He was trying to find someone who wouldn't flinch when he screamed. Gregory's hands curled slightly on the glass. You flinched, didn't you? She added gently. Yes, he admitted. I did. Maya sat across from him. Then let me come back. Not as a maid, not as a nanny, just as someone who understands. He studied her for a long moment. Agreed. They shook hands, but the gesture felt heavier than formality. It felt like the first stone in rebuilding something broken. That evening, back at the mansion, the air shifted the moment Maya stepped through the door. Mrs. Blake's eyes widened. Back so soon? The housekeeper asked. Maya smiled softly. He asked nicely this time. Gregory entered a moment later, coat folded over his arm. Let her settle in, and tell the agency she's not temporary anymore. Mrs. Blake nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. Upstairs, Jacob was still asleep. Gregory paused at the doorway to his son's room, then motioned for Maya to go first. She stepped in quietly. Jacob stirred, then opened his eyes. When he saw her, he didn't cry. He smiled. The rain came quietly that night, tapping against the tall windows of the Hunter mansion like hesitant knuckles. The storm outside made the house feel smaller, almost human. Gregory stood in his study, sleeves rolled up, staring at a photo he kept on the bookshelf, Anna holding baby Jacob in her arms. Her smile was wide, her hair caught in sunlight, her fingers brushing the baby's cheek. He hadn't looked at that photo in nearly a year. He wasn't ready to, until now. Down the hall, he could hear Maya humming softly. It wasn't a melody. He recognized something simple, something southern, like the songs his grandmother used to hum while making cornbread on Sundays. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed that sound, human warmth threading through the silence of money. He placed the photo down, exhaled, and walked toward Jacob's room. Maya sat beside the bed, her head bent low, whispering a story. The small bedside lamp wrapped her in soft gold light. Jacob's small hand clutched her sleeve while his eyelids fluttered with the slow rhythm of sleep. Gregory leaned against the doorframe. "You've done in one day what 15 professionals couldn't do in a year," he said quietly. Maya looked up, surprised. "Children don't need professionals, Mr. Hunter. They need presence." Her tone wasn't arrogant. It was steady, almost gentle, as though she were simply stating the weather. He nodded slowly. "Presence," he repeated. "That's not something I've been good at." "You're here now," she said, smoothing Jacob's hair. "I'm standing in a doorway," he replied. Maya's eyes flicked to him, the hint of a smile touching her lips. "Then that's where it starts." For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The hum of the rain filled the pause. Gregory's eyes softened as he watched Jacob's chest rise and fall, small and steady. "Good night, Mr. Hunter," she said finally. He wanted to leave. Instead, he asked, "What happened to your wrist?" Maya blinked, following his gaze. The sleeve of her cardigan had slipped back, revealing a faint white scar crossing her skin like a faded thread. She pulled the fabric down slowly. "It's old," she said. "From when I was about 14. Gregory didn't move. "An accident?" Maya hesitated. Then, softly, "A mirror. My brother was having a meltdown. He broke it, and I tried to stop him. Glass doesn't care who's right. It cuts anyway." Her words lingered in the air, sharp but not self-pitying. "Your brother Isaiah?" he asked. She nodded. "He used to hit his head against the wall when the world got too loud. Doctors said he might never talk. He proved them wrong. He talked, sang, laughed, until one night he didn't make it home." "I'm sorry," Gregory said, his voice keyeder now. "Don't be," Maya said. "He taught me more about love than anyone else. Even when it hurt." Gregory glanced toward his son. "Jacob's like him." "No." "Yes," she said softly, "and no. Every child's different, but they all feel when someone gives up on them." That struck deeper than she knew. Gregory's jaw tightened as he looked at his boy. "I never gave up." Maya didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence between them was thick enough to tell the truth. He ran a hand through his hair, stepping back from the doorway. "If you need anything for him, equipment, toys, therapy, just tell Mrs. Blake." "Oh, what he needs," Maya said, "can't be ordered from a catalog." He almost smiled. "Almost. You're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong." "I learned not to be afraid of truth a long time ago," she said. He studied her for a moment longer before leaving. As he walked back to his study, he glanced again at the photo of Anna and Jacob. Her eyes warm, forgiving, seemed to look through him. For the first time, he whispered aloud, "I'm trying, Anna." He poured himself a glass of scotch but didn't drink it. The echo of Maya's voice lingered in his head. He just needed someone to stay. The next morning, Maya rose before dawn. The sky was still gray-blue, the kind of color that feels like a held breath. She brewed coffee in the kitchen, the smell waking Mrs. Blake before the alarm did. "Morning, child," the old housekeeper said, tying her robe. "You didn't have to start breakfast this early." Maya smiled. "Old habit. My grandma used to say the day listens better when it starts with kindness." Mrs. Blake chuckled. "I like her already." They worked in easy silence, pancakes, bacon, sliced apples for Jacob, By the time Gregory came downstairs, the table was set. He paused at the sight of it, clearly unused to such domestic peace. "Smells like something my mother used to make," he said. "Then you'll eat," Maya said, "and so will Jacob." Gregory almost laughed. "Almost. You're very sure of yourself." "That I have to be," she said lightly. "The world doesn't listen to quiet women." Jacob toddled in just then, bare feet on marble, hair mussed. He clutched his blanket like a shield but didn't cry. Maya crouched to his level. "Good morning, sunshine," she said softly. He blinked, then miracle of miracles nodded. A single nod, small but deliberate. Gregory's eyes widened slightly. He'd never seen his son respond to a greeting. Mrs. Blake wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. "Lord above," she whispered. Jacob reached up, tugged Maya's sleeve, and pressed his little palm to her wrist right over the faded scar. She froze for a heartbeat, then smiled and covered his hand with hers. "See," she murmured. "Scars don't scare me, Jacob." The boy's lips parted, forming a faint sound. It wasn't a word, not yet, but it was something. Gregory looked at them, then down at his own hands used to building companies. Not moments like this. And for the first time, he wondered if he'd been building the wrong kind of legacy all along. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall living room windows, laying long golden stripes across the Persian rug. The mansion, once sterile and cavernous, now held a faint trace of life, quiet, tentative, like a song slowly finding its melody. Gregory Hunter sat on the leather couch, a legal brief open in front of him but untouched. His gaze drifted toward the hallway where Jacob's voice, a soft, babbling hum, could be heard. Not words, not yet, but sounds. Sounds that didn't involve screaming, scratching, or silence. Just breath and rhythm and presence. He looked at his watch. 3:04 p.m. The time of day that once meant tantrums, broken toys, and emergency calls to behavioral specialists. Today, it was just normal, or something close to it. Maya's voice floated from the other room, gentle, measured, layered with patience. "That's it, baby. One foot at a time. No rush." Her accent carried warmth, a lilt that curled around the vowels and made Jacob's name sound like music. Gregory stood and followed the sound. He paused at the doorway of the playroom, where the carpet was covered in puzzle pieces, crayon drawings, and a half-finished paper airplane. Jacob stood a few feet away from Maya, wobbling slightly, arms extended for balance. She was crouched low, palms open, waiting. "You've got this," she said softly. The little boy took a hesitant step, then another. When he reached her, he stumbled not into panic or fear but into her arms. Maya caught him, held him close. "Good job, baby. You're getting brave." Jacob smiled, a real one this time, and then, slowly, raised one small hand and touched her cheek. Gregory's breath caught in his throat. The gesture was so simple, so impossibly intimate. That same hand had clawed at nurses, yanked hair, left welts on arms. But now, it was soft. It was searching. It was remembering safety. Maya looked up and saw Gregory in the doorway. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't speak. She just kept holding the boy who now rested his forehead against her shoulder. Gregory stepped into the room, clearing his throat. "He seems calm." Maya smiled faintly. "He's figuring things out." "How?" he asked, more honest than skeptical. She stood, still holding Jacob. "Because I don't try to fix him. I meet him where he is. Some days that's here," she said, tapping her shoulder, "and some days that's under the table." Gregory folded his arms. "Is that what you did with your brother?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I used to think progress was measured in words, but it's really measured in trust." Jacob, still leaning against her, pointed a tiny finger toward the couch. "Duh," Gregory frowned. "Did he just say?" "He's trying," Maya said quickly. "Sometimes syllables come out like pieces of a puzzle. You'll hear them if you listen enough." Gregory felt something stir in his chest, a mixture of awe and sadness. He crouched to Jacob's level. "Hey, buddy." Jacob looked at him, didn't flinch. Gregory extended his hand, slowly. "Can I sit with you?" Jacob blinked, then without instruction walked toward him. Just 3 steps, but they hit Gregory harder than any boardroom victory ever had. Jacob touched his father's hand, then plopped down on the rug, grabbing a nearby crayon. Gregory looked at Maya. "Did you teach him that?" "No," she said gently. "He just decided he wanted to try." Gregory sat beside his son. The boy scribbled on a sheet of paper, humming softly. A green scribble, then blue, then a crooked circle. Maya crouched nearby, observing with calm eyes. "That circle? That's how he draws people. He hasn't tried that in weeks." Gregory looked at the page, a lopsided shape with 2 dots for eyes. "He drew me once," Maya added. "Just my cheek. He said it smelled like cinnamon." Gregory smiled an actual smile. "You do make the kitchen smell like cinnamon." "Guilty." They sat like that for a while, the 3 of them, beneath the slow-turning ceiling fan, surrounded by broken crayons and paper scraps. Later that evening, Maya stood by the kitchen window drying dishes. The view looked out over the back garden, neatly trimmed hedges, stone path, a wrought iron bench where no one ever Saturday. She imagined how different it must have looked when Anna was alive. Maybe they'd had dinner outside. Maybe there had been laughter. Gregory entered quietly, still in his button-down shirt, sleeves rolled. "He's asleep." Maya nodded. "Peacefully?" "Yes, and holding the paper with the circle on it." She smiled. "He's keeping track. Every day that feels safe. He draws something." Gregory leaned against the counter. "When do you draw?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "Me? Yeah. You take care of everyone else. When do you take care of you?" Maya turned to face him. "I used to draw, before things got hard. Now I write notes in my phone I never send. Mostly to Isaiah. Things I'd say if he were still here." Gregory studied her. "What would you tell him about today?" She looked down, drying her hands on a towel. "That I watched a little boy try to speak, and that for the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere." Gregory nodded slowly. "You do." "No." That caught her off guard. "What?" "You belong here, Maya." She laughed softly, trying to shake off the lump in her throat. "Careful, Mr. Hunter. That sounds dangerously close to kindness." He met her eyes. "It's not kindness. It's truth." She swallowed, turning back to the sink. "Truth can be heavy. I'm getting used to carrying heavy things." Their eyes met again, and for a long moment, neither of them looked away. Then Jacob cried faintly from upstairs just once. Maya moved quickly, but Gregory raised a hand. "I've got this." She paused. "I want to try," he said. She nodded. "Okay. Just remember, it's not about fixing. It's about staying." Gregory left the room, the sound of his footsteps steady. Maya leaned back against the counter, closed her eyes, and let herself smile. Not the kind born from politeness, but from something deeper. The kind that said maybe, just maybe, the house was learning how to breathe again. The next morning began with rain. Not the harsh, unforgiving kind, but a gentle drizzle soft as a sigh tapping on the glass panels of the conservatory like it was asking for permission to enter. The mansion, wrapped in mist, seemed to exhale, as if the walls themselves had begun to let go of whatever they'd been holding onto for so long. Maya stood by the kitchen island, quietly brewing tea. Not the fancy imported kind from the Hunter pantry, but a small tin of loose-leaf chamomile she had brought from home. A comfort blend, one she used to make for Isaiah on nights he couldn't sleep. She measured it slowly, with reverence. Healing, she'd learned, came not only from grand gestures but from rituals: a hot cup, a soft voice, a safe room. Mrs. Blake entered, her slippers muffled against the tile. "You're up early again, dear." "Couldn't sleep," Maya replied. "Too quiet." Mrs. Blake gave her a knowing look. "That kind of quiet's a blessing around here. You should enjoy it." "Huh. I do," Maya said, pouring the tea into a ceramic mug. "But sometimes quiet reminds you of all the things that aren't being said." Mrs. Blake hummed in agreement, reaching for a banana and her crossword. Truer words never spoken. Maya was stirring in honey when she felt his presence. Gregory stood in the doorway, hair slightly tousled, sleeves rolled up, shirt untucked. He looked almost human. "You're making tea?" he asked. not hiding his surprise. "I was," she replied. "Would you like a cup?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." She poured him a mug and handed it over. Their fingers brushed. Neither of them said anything about it. He took a sip, eyebrows raised. "Chamomile? With a little lavender. Calms the nervous system," she said, "and people who mistake control for peace." Gregory chuckled, the sound low and genuine. "You're not going to make this easy, are you?" "No," she said, looking him square in the eye. "I'm going to make it real." He took another sip, watching her over the rim. Jacob's still asleep. "That's a good sign." "Is it?" he asked, more to himself than to her. "Sometimes I wonder if the peace means progress or just exhaustion." Maya leaned against the counter, folding her arms. "You're used to results, Mr. Hunter. That's your world inputs, outputs, projections. But children, especially ones like Jacob, don't move on schedules. They move on trust." He nodded slowly, setting his cup down. "It's hard to know what's right, what to do. Especially when every expert you hire says something different." "Expert don't raise children," she said. "People do." He looked at her for a long moment. "Do you ever resent having to be the person who always shows up?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked. "I used to. When I was younger. When I thought showing up was all there was. But now," she shrugged, "now I know it's where everything begins." Gregory stepped closer, hands in his pockets. "I wanted to show you something. If you have a moment." She glanced toward the hallway. The monitor light from Jacob's room glowed green. He was still asleep. "I have a moment," she said. He led her through the hallway into his private study, a room Maya hadn't entered yet. It was grand, lined with books, awards, plaques. But it wasn't those things that caught her attention. It was the wall behind his desk. Photos, black and white, sepia-toned, full-color all of Anna, one with her holding Jacob in the hospital, smiling with tired, glowing eyes. Another on a boat, her hair tangled in wind. A third, framed larger than the rest, of her playing the piano mid-laugh, her fingers frozen above the keys. Maya stopped. She was beautiful. She was everything, Gregory said, voice thin. And then, one day, she wasn't. Maya turned to him, eyes soft. "You never moved her pictures." "I couldn't." He exhaled. "For months, I told myself it was because I didn't want Jacob to forget her. But truth is, I was the one who couldn't let go." She stepped closer, gently touching the frame of the hospital photo. "You don't have to let go to move forward. You just have to stop walking backward." Gregory looked at her, something deep in his chest pulling taut. "Do you believe in second chances?" "Yes," she said. "But only if you stop wasting the first one." He nodded slowly. "I've wasted a lot." "Oh." She met his gaze. "Then stop." For a moment, the silence between them wasn't empty. It was full, charged. Gregory gestured toward the photo. "Jacob never smiles like that. Not with me. I keep thinking, what if I missed something? What if I just don't know how to be a father?" Maya's voice was gentle. "There's no such thing as knowing how. There's only showing up. Over and over. Even when it's hard. Especially then." He exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck. "Anna used to say that. She always knew when I was hiding behind work. Women like her usually do," Maya said softly. They stood there for another beat before she stepped back. "I should check on him." Gregory nodded. "Of course." She walked to the doorway, paused, and turned. "Thank you for showing me this. Thank you for not pretending it didn't matter," he replied. She left the room, the smell of chamomile and lavender still lingering in the air. Jacob was stirring when Maya entered the nursery. His eyes blinked open slowly, lashes fluttering like wings. When he saw her, he reached out, no words, no sounds, just that familiar gesture. His hand touched her wrist. Maya leaned down and pressed her forehead to his. Morning, sunshine. He smiled, small, crooked, real. She sat beside him on the bed, humming that same old lullaby, knowing that whatever came next, this moment, this connection was where everything truly began. The Hunter estate rarely saw visitors without appointment. The long gravel drive, the high iron gates, the silent security cameras tucked beneath the ivy, it all sent a message. This is private. Stay out. But that Friday morning, just as the staff were settling into their routines, the front intercom crackled to life. Mrs. Blake frowned, wiping her hands on her apron before answering. Yes? A male voice came through, low and smooth. Delivery. For Miss Williams. Mrs. Blake's brow furrowed. Miss Williams? What kind of delivery? A personal item. She'll recognize it. From the hallway, Maya looked up from tying Jacob's shoelaces. Did he say it was for me? Yes, Mrs. Blake called back, wary. Gregory, who had just stepped into the foyer with a phone pressed to his ear, paused when he heard Maya's name. Send a camera check, he said to Mrs. Blake. Don't open the gate yet. Mrs. Blake nodded and tapped the screen. A small monitor blinked on. A man stood outside the gate, leaning casually against a gray sedan. He wore a leather jacket and aviator sunglasses, a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead. He held a flat, carefully wrapped package under one arm. Do you recognize him? Gregory asked, glancing at Maya. She stepped closer, peered at the screen. Her face went pale. Gregory noticed immediately. You know him? Her voice was tight. His name's Derek. He used to be my landlord. Used to be? He stopped being my landlord when I couldn't pay rent on time 3 months in a row. Gregory's jaw flexed. And now he's delivering packages? He's not a delivery man, Maya said. He's looking for something. Gregory moved toward the control panel. He's not getting in. But Maya caught his arm. Wait, let me see what it is. Just hand off. No invite. Gregory looked at her hand on his sleeve, then gave a tight nod. Fine, but I'll be watching. Maya walked down the front steps as the gates slid open just enough to let her through. The wind had picked up, tugging at the hem of her sweater. She hugged her arms as she approached Derek, who smiled like a man who'd already caused trouble and was hoping to cause more. Maya, he said, pulling off his sunglasses, didn't expect this place to suit you so well. Looks expensive. She ignored the bait. What do you want? I was clearing out the old mailbox. Found something addressed to you. Thought I'd be neighborly. He held out the package. It was wrapped in brown paper, no label. Maya hesitated. You open it, she said. Derek raised an eyebrow. Come on, girl. I came all this way. You open it, she repeated. With exaggerated care, he peeled back the paper. Inside was a weathered children's book, The Snowy Day, by Ezra Jack Keats. Maya's breath caught. That had been Isaiah's favorite. She hadn't seen it in years. There, Derek said, grinning. Thought it looked sentimental. Figured you'd want it. Maya stared at the book. Why are you really here, Derek? He stepped closer, dropping the charm. You still owe me 3 months' rent. I figure now that you're working for Mr. Fancy over there, you can settle up. I told you when I have it, I'll pay. You have it now, he said, eyes flicking toward the mansion. You've got yourself a rich man and a sweet gig. Don't make me come back with paperwork. Maya's jaw clenched. I'm not afraid of you. You should be, he said, leaning in. People like you don't get to hide behind gates forever. A second later, the gate buzzed. Gregory's voice crackled through the intercom. You've made your point. Get off the property. Derek raised both hands and backed toward his car. Nice catching up, Maya. She stood there, holding the book, hands shaking slightly. Gregory met her at the door. I saw everything. I'm fine, she said quickly, brushing past him. Maya. She turned. You're not fine. Her mouth trembled. He knew exactly what would get to me. That book, he stole it from my things when I moved out. Just waited for the right moment to twist the knife. Gregory exhaled. You don't owe him anything. You've given more to this house in 2 weeks than he probably has to anyone his whole life. She gave a sad smile. Thank you. But this kind of thing doesn't just disappear, Mr. Hunter. It lingers. He stepped forward. Then let it linger here, where you're not alone. She looked at him, unsure what to say. Then a small voice called from the staircase. Maya? Jacob. She turned and saw him standing in his socks, clutching a crayon in one hand. Coming, baby, she said. As she climbed the stairs, Gregory stayed behind, picking up the brown paper Derek had dropped. Scrawled faintly on the inside was a number, a phone number, and 2 words. Think carefully. He crushed it in his fist. That night, Maya placed the snowy day on Jacob's nightstand. He tapped the cover gently, smiling at the boy on the front. "You want me to read it?" she asked. Jacob nodded. She opened the first page. One winter morning, Peter woke up and looked out the window. Jacob leaned against her, eyes wide with wonder. Downstairs, Gregory watched the hallway monitor, the soft sound of Maya's voice barely audible. He reached for the phone, then hesitated. Instead, he opened his laptop and started a background check on Derek's name. Some debts, he thought, aren't just about money. Some debts needed to be handled differently. The next morning dawned clear, the storm having passed with the kind of clean quiet that made the world feel polished. But beneath the sunshine and blue sky, something darker lingered in the Hunter mansion. Not in the walls, but in the air tents. Watchful, alert, Gregory Hunter stood at his study window, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the driveway where Derek had stood the day before. He hadn't told Maya yet, but the background check had come back overnight. Derek Tyler, 2 prior evictions, 1 small claims court suit involving harassment, and a sealed incident report tied to an altercation with a former tenant. Nothing that would land him in jail, but enough to confirm what Gregory already felt in his gut: this man was trouble. And the type of trouble that liked to linger. The door opened behind him. Mrs. Blake entered, her voice low. He called again. Gregory turned. "What did he say?" "Said he left something in the mailbox. Wants Maya to pick it up herself." She hesitated. "He's playing a game, sir." Gregory's jaw tensed. "Well, he's about to lose." Maya was sitting in the sunroom with Jacob, helping him stack colorful wooden blocks. He had taken to color matching now, quietly sorting each piece before placing it just so. Maya praised him softly with each successful pairing, a warm glow lighting her face. Gregory entered, still holding the printout of Derek's report. "Can we talk?" he asked. She looked up, alert. "Of course." She handed Jacob a small green block and followed Gregory into the hallway. He closed the door behind them. "He called again," Gregory said. Her expression didn't change. She looked tired, not surprised. "What does he want now?" "Claims he left something in the mailbox. Wants you to pick it up personally." She closed her eyes for a beat. "Of course he does. That's what he does. Makes you jump for crumbs." "You're not jumping this time," Gregory said firmly. "I'll send someone to check, or I'll go myself." "No," Maya said quietly. He blinked. "No? If you go, it gives him more power. And if I keep hiding behind you, I lose mine." Gregory stared at her. "Maya," she held up a hand. "Listen, I'm not being reckless, but I know men like Derek. They don't care about laws or logic. They care about leverage. And when they realize they're losing control of you, they push harder. This visit, this game, it's about reminding me that he can." Gregory was quiet. Then let's remind him that you're not alone." Maya smiled faintly. "That's the only reason I'm not falling apart right now." Late that afternoon, they drove together, Gregory at the wheel, Maya in the passenger seat. She was wearing a gray coat and a firm expression. She didn't tremble, didn't hesitate, but her hands stayed clenched in her lap the entire ride. The mailbox was a rusted metal cube outside her old apartment building. The complex looked even more neglected than she remembered: peeling paint, broken blinds, trash bins half full and sagging. The kind of place where dreams went to rot. Gregory parked across the street and got out with her, though he stayed back as she approached the mailbox. His phone was in his hand, security on speed dial. Maya opened the metal door slowly. Inside was a manila envelope with her name scrawled in messy black ink. She pulled it out, checked for weight, then flipped it open. Inside, a single photograph. A snapshot of her standing at the Hunter mansion gate with Jacob in her arms. She froze. Gregory saw her go still and crossed the street in seconds. "What is it?" She handed him the photo. His face darkened as he studied it. "When was this taken?" "I don't know, but that's not the point. He's showing me he's watching." "Anne." Gregory took a deep breath, his voice low and furious. "This isn't just a scare tactic anymore." "No," she said, eyes burning. "Now it's a threat." That evening, Maya sat in Jacob's room longer than usual. He'd fallen asleep with his cheek pressed to her forearm, his little fingers tangled in her sweater. She didn't move, just watched him breathe. When Gregory knocked gently on the doorframe, she didn't look up. "I filed a report," he said, "with the precinct. One of my attorneys is connecting us to a private investigator." She nodded slowly. "He won't stop until someone makes him." "I plan to." Maya looked at him then. "I'm not used to this. Protection." Gregory crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "Get used to it." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed strong. "He knows Jacob exists now." Gregory's face turned to stone. "He doesn't come near my son. Ever." "Good," Maya said. "Because if he tries, I won't wait for the law." There was steel in her voice, now fierce, unmoving. Gregory looked at her, something almost like pride flickering in his eyes. "You're not just here for Jacob, are you?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. I'm here because no child yours, mine, anyone's should grow up thinking love is something they have to earn." The room fell quiet again, except for the soft rustle of sheets as Jacob turned in his sleep. Gregory rose and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'll make sure he never comes near you again." She didn't flinch. She just whispered, "Don't promise it if you don't mean it." "I do." She believed him. At midnight, the mansion lights were dim. Maya sat at the kitchen table with Mrs. Blake, sipping lukewarm tea. "You ever deal with a man like that?" Maya asked softly. Mrs. Blake gave her a long look. "Once. Long time ago. I stayed quiet too long. But one day, I stopped." "What happened?" "He stopped too, not because he changed, but because I did." Maya nodded slowly. Then she said something she hadn't said in years. "I'm tired of surviving. I want to live." Mrs. Blake reached over and squeezed her hand. "And you will, baby. You already are." The Hunter estate sat in the hush of early morning, where even the birds had not yet found their voice. The sky, painted in soft blue-gray, hinted at rain again, though no clouds had wept just yet. The stillness was rare, almost holy, like the pause before a hymn. Maya walked the stone path through the garden with Jacob at her side, their footsteps silent on the damp flagstone. It was part of their new morning routine, 15 minutes outdoors, barefoot if possible, no distractions, no toys, just air, earth, and quiet. Jacob clutched a small pebble in one hand, his other tucked safely in hers. His eyes scanned the hedges and flower beds with a curiosity Maya had come to recognize, not as wandering, but as learning. He didn't miss details. He absorbed them. When they reached the wrought iron bench beneath the willow tree, Jacob stopped and pointed. "You want to sit?" Maya asked. He nodded once and climbed up with careful steps, then patted the space beside him. She Saturday. The willow swayed gently, its long tendrils brushing the ground like fingertips. Maya looked down at Jacob's bare feet dangling just above the ground. "Do you know," she began, "when my brother Isaiah was your age, he used to line up leaves in perfect rows. Not for fun, not to decorate, but because it made the world feel safe." Jacob blinked up at her. "I didn't get it at the time. I thought he was wasting time. I'd pull him away, try to make him join in with the normal kids. But now," she smiled, "now I wish I'd sat beside him and asked what he saw." Jacob held out his pebble to her. She took it carefully. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered. From the second-floor window, Gregory watched the scene. He didn't know why he'd come to the window just then, didn't know what he expected to see, but when he saw Jacob sitting still, not rocking, not screaming, not melting down, but simply being a wave of emotion, hit him hard. It wasn't the peace that undid him, it was the ease between his son and this woman, a black maid from a crumbling apartment in a part of town Gregory had never dared drive through. And yet here she was, steadying the boy Gregory couldn't reach. For a moment, guilt clawed at his ribs, then something else. Resolve. He turned from the window and went downstairs. "Mr. Hunter?" Maya said, surprised to see him approaching the garden. "Didn't mean to intrude," he said, "but I figured the bench had room for one more." Jacob looked at him and scooted over without hesitation. Gregory sat beside them, exhaling as if the air felt different down here. "What's the ritual?" he asked. "Listening," Maya replied, "to whatever the morning has to say." He nodded, then said nothing. Jacob handed him the pebble. Gregory looked at it, then at Maya. "Is this currency?" She smiled. It's trust. Gregory swallowed. He's changed since you came. Maya looked down at her hands. He hasn't changed. He's always been this way. He just finally feels seen. Gregory turned to Jacob. I want to see him too. Really see him. Maya hesitated, then spoke softly. Then sit still. Be patient. And let him lead. Jacob stood suddenly and wandered a few steps forward, then stopped to inspect a patch of moss by the tree roots. Gregory moved to rise, but Maya gently touched his arm. Let him be. He paused. I want to go with him, then follow his rhythm, not yours. Gregory stayed seated, watching his son crouch and run his fingers through the moss. Why is that so hard? He asked. Because we were taught to fix, not to feel, Maya answered. Especially men like you. He didn't argue, just nodded. Later that morning, after Jacob had finished his breakfast and gone down for a nap, Maya walked into the study where Gregory was reviewing security camera footage from the previous day. Derek's car had returned, parked down the block for 35 minutes before driving away. Gregory looked up when Maya entered. He's still circling. I'm not surprised. I have someone watching your old apartment now, he said, just in case. She frowned. That place isn't worth protecting. You lived there, Gregory said simply. That's enough. She crossed her arms, thoughtful. What happens when people like Derek realize their tactics don't work anymore? Gregory looked her dead in the eye. They escalate. Maya didn't flinch. Then we stay ahead. You speak like someone who's had to do this before. I have. He leaned back in his chair. You ever think about leaving all this behind? Starting over? She smiled without warmth. Mr. Hunter, black women don't get to start over. We just endure better. Gregory absorbed that quietly. I want more than endurance for you. For Jacob. For all of us. Wanting, she said, is the easy part. He stood and walked to the window again, watching the willows sway. I think it's time Jacob had something to call his own, he said. Maya raised an eyebrow. Like what? A space, a garden, a place where the rules don't overwhelm him, where he can build something with his own hands. Maya tilted her head. You mean his bench? Gregory smiled. Exactly. She nodded slowly. Then let's build it together, him included. He met her gaze, his voice firm. Together. That evening, as the house quieted again, Maya stepped onto the front porch with a cup of tea in hand. She looked out toward the horizon, where the city lights blinked faintly in the distance. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small beneath them. Mrs. Blake stepped out beside her. Heard about the garden plan? Maya smiled. He's starting to listen. About time, the older woman muttered, sipping her own tea. They stood together in silence, two women from different generations bound by something deeper than duty resilience. You're changing him, you know, Mrs. Blake said. I'm not trying to, Maya replied. I'm just not leaving. Mrs. Blake gave a soft laugh. Sometimes, that's the greatest revolution. Sunday morning came with the scent of soil. The Hunter estate, usually humming with the low thrum of quiet wealth, polished silver, hushed conversations. Climate-controlled order now smelled of earth, mulch, and freshly cut wood. Maya knelt in the side yard, sleeves rolled, hair tied back with a faded blue scarf. She held a small trowel in one hand, gently digging the outline of a shallow trench. Jacob, sitting in the dirt beside her with bare feet and serious eyes, mimicked her motions with a plastic spoon. Gregory stood nearby, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, holding a set of plans sketched crudely on graph paper. We're not exactly the property brothers, he muttered. Maya looked up, smiling. It's not about precision, it's about presence. He watched Jacob pat down a mound of soil and draw a crooked smiley face on it with a stick. Presence, Gregory repeated quietly. That I can do. Jacob stood and began arranging pebbles around his dirt drawing. He worked without instruction, lost in the quiet rhythm of making something that was his. Gregory knelt beside him, a hesitant gesture still unfamiliar. Mind if I help? Jacob paused. Then he reached into the small bucket beside him and handed his father a white stone. Maja saw it, a quiet, monumental offering. Gregory took the stone with care, as though it were gold. By mid-morning, the garden was beginning to take shape, a curved path lined with natural stones. leading to the willow tree where the wrought iron bench sat waiting. Maya had suggested incorporating elements that Jacob responded to: a small patch of moss, a birdhouse, wind chimes made of sea glass. Mrs. Blake joined them with lemonade and her usual commentary. "I haven't seen dirt on Mr. Hunter's shoes since Y2K, she teased, setting down the tray. Gregory wiped his brow. If someone told me 6 months ago I'd be building a sensory garden with my son and my housekeeper, I would have called security. "I'm not a housekeeper," Maya said gently. Gregory glanced over. "No, you're not." Jacob stood in front of the bench now, holding a small wooden sign Maya had painted with him the night before. On it, in bright, uneven letters, were the words, "Jacob's Quiet Place." "Where should it go?" Gregory asked. Jacob looked around, then pointed to a spot beside the tree's trunk. Maya took the sign from him and pressed it gently into the soil. Jacob clapped, a soft smile spreading across his face. "It's official," Gregory said. "You've got your first piece of real estate." Jacob giggled. For a moment, it felt like joy had taken root, not loud or explosive, but firm, like something finally allowed to grow. Later that afternoon, Maya was scrubbing her hands at the kitchen sink when Gregory entered, carrying 2 iced teas. "For you," he said, setting one on the counter. She took it, the glass cool in her dirt-warmed hands. "Thanks. I wanted to ask you something," he said, shifting his weight awkwardly. She turned toward him. "Okay. There's a fundraiser this weekend for children with sensory processing disorders. It's at the Community Arts Center. Small event, nothing fancy." "Den," Maya raised a brow. "And?" "I was thinking of taking Jacob, introducing him to a few parents, seeing what's out there, support, tools, maybe a program or two." Her expression softened. "That's a big step." "I know. Is this the same man who yelled at me on the front steps 2 weeks ago?" Gregory winced. "You're never going to let that go, are you?" "Not a chance," she said, sipping her tea. "But I will say this, every parent has a moment when they realize loving their child isn't enough. They have to learn their child, too." He nodded slowly. "And I'm learning." She smiled. "You're doing more than that. You're showing up." Gregory leaned against the counter. "I was hoping you'd come with us. To the event." Maya blinked. "As what?" He hesitated. "As the person Jacob trusts the most." Her breath caught. "I know you don't like attention," he said quickly. "And I know people may talk. But I don't care. Jacob needs you. I need you." She looked away, gripping the glass a little tighter. "That's a lot to ask." "I wouldn't ask if it wasn't true." She said nothing for a long time. Then, "I'll think about it." He nodded. "That's all I wanted." That night, Maya sat alone in her room. The door cracked just enough to hear Jacob murmuring in his sleep down the hall. On her nightstand was a notebook, the same one she wrote in every night, though no one else knew it existed. She opened it to a clean page and wrote, "Tonight, he gave me a garden. Not flowers, not jewels, just a space where Jacob can breathe. And so can I. He doesn't know it yet. But something shifted. In him, in me, in us." She paused, then added, "I'm scared. Not of Derek, not of the work, but of how easy it is to care, to want, to hope." She set the notebook down and stared out the window. For the first time in a long time, the stars didn't feel far away. They felt like they were waiting. The week moved quickly, almost deceptively so. Since the garden had taken shape, Jacob had found a rhythm. Every morning, he walked the path barefoot, touching each stone like it held a memory. He talked more now, not in full sentences, not always with words, but with gestures and sounds that carried meaning. He laughed when the wind caught the chimes, sat quietly when Maya hummed, and clung to her hand like it anchored him to the earth. Gregory watched it all unfold, silently, carefully. He no longer asked for reports from his security staff, he asked for insight. About Jacob, about Maya, about the man still lurking on the periphery of their lives. Because Derek hadn't gone away. Gregory was in his study late Thursday afternoon when his phone buzzed. A message from the private investigator. Derek Tyler contacted a local tabloid. Says he has proof the billionaire is romantically involved with his black maid. Gregory stared at the screen. The photo, the one by the gate. Jacob in Maya's arms, his own face blurred in the background. A moment of connection, now twisted for profit. He rose, walking to the window. Outside, the sun cut across the lawn in long gold bands. Maya was there, helping Jacob feed breadcrumbs to a pair of doves. It was a tender moment, unremarkable to the world, sacred to them. And now it was under threat. He picked up his phone and called his attorney. "I want a preemptive cease and desist, and I want the paper on notice. No story runs without going through me." His attorney was silent for a second. It may already be too late. Gregory hung up. Maya noticed his silence at dinner. He barely touched his food, and when Jacob spilled his water, Gregory didn't flinch or react. He simply handed over a napkin like a man halfway somewhere else. "Something wrong?" Maya asked after Jacob had been tucked in for the night. Gregory poured himself a scotch, sat by the fireplace, and stared into the flames. "Derek's trying to sell a story," he said. "Says I'm involved with you." Maya's face stayed calm, but her hand went still over the teacup. "And are you?" she asked softly. Gregory looked at her. There was no fear in her eyes, just clarity, courage, that same unwavering gaze she gave Jacob when he was spinning, melting, falling apart. "I care about you," he said, "deeply, and not just because of what you've done for Jacob." Maya nodded. "But people won't see that, not the way we do." "No," Gregory agreed. "They'll see scandal. A billionaire. A maid. A power dynamic they don't understand. And they'll tear you apart before they even spell your name right." She sipped her tea. "Then let them try." He blinked. "You're not scared?" "Of them? No," she said. "But I'm scared of losing what Jacob and I have built here. What you're learning to build too." Gregory leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Then what do we do?" Maya stood, walked to the window, and pulled back the curtain. Outside, the garden glowed softly under the moonlight. Jacob's quiet place, their sanctuary. "We hold the line," she said. "We don't hide, but we don't feed the fire either." Gregory stood, stepping beside her. "Let me protect you," he said. She turned to him. "Then don't fight this with money. Fight it with truth." Friday morning came with a phone call from Gregory's PR director. "It's spreading," the voice said. "A blog picked it up. 2 gossip sites. Photos are circulating. Send me the links," Gregory replied, jaw tight. He opened the articles. They weren't vulgar, not yet, but the implication was clear. Billionaire Gregory Hunter finds comfort in the arms of the help. A mysterious nanny or a secret lover? Maya hadn't seen it yet. She was in the kitchen, braiding Jacob's hair after his bath. He sat calmly on a stool, munching apple slices, humming a tune Maya had made up just for him. Gregory entered quietly. She looked up, instantly knowing. "Show me," she said. He handed her the phone. She scrolled, read, exhaled. Jacob looked between them. "Trouble?" he asked in a small voice. Both adults turned. Gregory knelt beside him. "No trouble, buddy. Just noise." Maya crouched down. "You're safe. Nothing's changing." Jacob nodded, then reached for her hand. "I trust you," he whispered. Maya's throat caught. "I trust you too," she replied. That night, they sat together on the front porch, Gregory, Maya, and Mrs. Blake, watching the sky darken. "Remember what I said," Mrs. Blake said, sipping her evening tea. "People will talk no matter what you do. Might as well give them something worth talking about." Maya laughed. "You should run PR. I run sense," the older woman said. "That's better." Gregory looked at Maya. "There's an event tomorrow, the fundraiser. You still want to go?" Maya nodded. "Yes, but only if we walk in together, proud, not hiding." He reached over and took her hand. "Then we'll walk in as we are." She smiled. "What's that?" Gregory looked toward the garden, where Jacob's wind chimes caught the breeze. "A family," he said. The next morning, the papers screamed louder, but the Hunter car pulled up to the art center just after noon, and when the doors opened, out stepped Gregory in a charcoal suit, Jacob in his tiny navy blazer, and Maya in a soft cream dress with her hair braided down her back. People whispered, cameras flashed, but no one turned away, because the truth, when walked out into the light, carries its own power. And sometimes, the only way to silence the noise is to let them hear you live. The Community Art Center was a modest building tucked between a line of red brick storefronts and a narrow park shaded by aging oaks. There was nothing extravagant about it, no flashing lights, No velvet ropes, no charity auctions, just rows of folding chairs, easels lined up against the walls, and children's paintings hung with clothespins on twine. But for families like Gregory's, the place held something far more valuable than prestige. Understanding, Jacob clutched Maya's hand as they stepped through the glass doors. He wore his navy blazer, but the collar tugged slightly on his neck. He didn't speak, but Maya noticed the slight twitch in his fingers. A signal. Too much sound. Too many eyes. Too much everything. She crouched beside him, smoothing her hand down his back. "Jacob," she said gently, "remember our anchor." He nodded slowly, squeezing the small fidget toy in his pocket, a soft rubber whale she'd given him the night before. "Breathe with me," she whispered, and together they inhaled 1, 2, 3, and then exhaled 4, 5, 6. The storm passed. Gregory watched from behind, amazed again at how she could reach his son with nothing but presence and patience. The receptionist smiled warmly at them. "Mr. Hunter, welcome. We're so glad you made it. This is the family sensory hour. You're just in time for the art therapy circle." Maya nodded. "We'll join." Gregory started to speak but stopped. He didn't want to lead here. This was Maya's world, Jacob's world, not his to conquer, but to learn from. Inside the art room, low music played. No harsh lighting, no buzzing fluorescents. Everything was deliberate, calming, soft. Families were scattered across floor mats. Children painted with fingers, sponges, brushes, held in fists. Some worked in silence. Others spoke in staccato phrases or short, echoing loops. Jacob walked in slowly, eyes scanning every corner. No one stared. No one whispered. One little girl flapped her hands joyfully at the paint on her arms. A boy in the corner rocked gently while pressing tissue paper to a canvas. A mother hummed while brushing her daughter's hair. Jacob exhaled. His shoulders dropped. His hand found Maya's again. This was a room with no echo. No judgment, no shame. Just space. They sat on the mat together, and a volunteer handed Jacob a tray of primary colors. Instead of diving in, Jacob watched the others for a long moment. Then, quietly, he dipped one finger in yellow. Maya offered a soft smile. "That's a happy color." He smeared a line across the paper, then blue, then red. Soon he was lost in it, mixing, layering, blending. He didn't speak, but his breathing was steady, his eyes bright. Gregory knelt beside him. "What are you making?" he asked. Jacob didn't answer right away. Then, with the smallest smile, he whispered, "A garden." "No." Maya's breath caught. Gregory swallowed hard. "You want to show me?" Jacob nodded and patted the mat. Gregory, Saturday. Together, they painted. Not perfectly, not skillfully, but together. And for Jacob, that was everything. After the session, the center's coordinator, a woman named Diane with silver curls and a voice like honey, pulled Gregory aside. "You've got a special boy," she said. "I know," he replied. "I just didn't know how to find him." Diane smiled. "You're finding him now." She looked toward Maya, who was packing Jacob's things with practiced grace. "She's part of that too." Gregory nodded. "She's everything." Diane placed a flyer in his hand. "We're hosting a panel next month. Parents, caregivers, therapists, talking openly about raising neurodivergent children. Would you consider sharing your experience?" Gregory hesitated. "I'm not the expert. Sometimes the journey matters more than the arrival," Diane said, "and your voice carries weight." He looked over at Maya and Jacob, their heads bent together. "I'll think about it." They left the center quietly. No paparazzi waited outside this time. Just the golden hush of late afternoon. Jacob slept in the back seat, his cheek pressed to Maya's arm. She didn't move. Gregory glanced at them in the rearview mirror and felt something shift again. Not just affection, not just respect, but belonging. He didn't speak until they were nearly home. "Thank you," he said softly. Maya opened her eyes. "For what?" "For helping me walk into a world I was too afraid to admit I didn't understand." She smiled gently. "You don't have to understand it all. You just have to stay in it." He nodded. "I will." Back at the estate, the sun was dipping low. Jacob stirred as Gregory carried him inside, his arms wrapped tight around his father's neck. For the first time in months, the boy didn't resist. He just leaned in. Mrs. Blake met them at the door with her usual watchful eyes. "How was it?" "Good," Maya said. "No meltdowns?" Mrs. Blake asked. "No," Gregory replied. "Only growth." Maya headed upstairs with Jacob, who was now fully awake and babbling softly about colors and birds. Gregory watched them go. Mrs. Blake cleared her throat. "You're falling," she said. He turned. "Excuse me? You're falling for that woman." Gregory didn't deny it. "Yes, I am. She's stronger than she looks. I know, too. And the world's harder on women like her than men like you." He met her gaze. "That's why I won't let the world define us." Mrs. Blake studied him for a moment. Then, finally, she nodded. "Then you better be ready for what comes next," she said. "Because if you let her down, you'll lose more than her." "I won't," he said, voice steady. And in his chest, he meant it. It happened on a Tuesday, just after the rain. The mansion was quiet. Jacob napped upstairs. Maya was folding towels in the laundry room, and Gregory stood in the kitchen, flipping through a stack of mail he didn't remember asking for. Junk flyers, a donation letter, a couriered envelope with no return address. He paused at that last one. It wasn't thick. Just one page. But the moment his fingers touched the seal, something in his gut twisted. He opened it. Inside was a high-resolution photo Jacob, in the garden, hugging Maya's waist. The angle was from the woods beyond the estate's fence, and the zoom was surgical. Gregory's heart thudded once, loud and deep. Then he saw the note, scrawled across the bottom in black ink. Does he know who his real father is? Gregory found Maya in the hallway 2 minutes later. She saw his face before he said a word. "What is it?" He handed her the envelope. She read the message and paled. "He took that picture here. I've already called security. We'll sweep the perimeter, install more cameras." But Maya wasn't looking at the photo anymore. She was looking at the question. "Gregory," she said slowly, "this isn't just harassment anymore. This is slander. It's bait. He's trying to unmake everything we've built." Gregory's voice was low. "He won't succeed." Maya met his eyes. What if he doesn't need to? What if just asking the question is enough to ruin everything? He exhaled, chest tight. Then we don't play by his rules anymore. Whoa. The next hour moved like a slow unraveling. Gregory's legal team was mobilized. A formal restraining order was filed. A private firm was dispatched to search for hidden cameras or tracking devices. Mrs. Blake moved Jacob to a guest room on the second floor, farther from any exterior walls. But it wasn't fear Maya felt. Not yet. It was something more corrosive. Fury. Derek hadn't just followed her. He had stepped into Jacob's world now, weaponized his innocence, and worse, he was using the ugliest part of America's whispered gossip to do it. A white child, a black woman, and the assumption that love must mean sex, and that sex must mean manipulation. Does he know who his real father is? As if her presence could only be explained by seduction. Not service, not care, not devotion, not love. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, her notebook open, but her pen untouched. The words wouldn't come. Not the right ones. Not now. Then came the knock. Not from the front door. Not from the hallway. From the window. She froze. A silhouette stood outside the glass, just a shape, faint, backlit by moonlight. Her breath caught. She reached for her phone, dialed security with shaking fingers. By the time 2 guards reached her room, the figure was gone. Only muddy footprints remained on the stone ledge beneath the window. Gregory was furious. He reviewed every second of the surveillance feed. Nothing. No clear angle. Whoever it was had found the one blind spot left on the entire estate. "I want motion lights. Thermal sensors. That fence gets tripwires." He barked into his phone. "I don't care what it costs." Maya stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "He's not just testing you. He's testing me." Gregory turned. "Then we end this." Maya walked closer, her voice calm but certain. "I want to go on the record. I want to tell my story before Derek tells it for me." You mean the press?" "No," she said. "I mean the truth. A sit-down interview. With someone reputable. Someone who'll let me speak. Gregory hesitated. That puts you in the spotlight. I'm already in it, she said. But right now, the light's shaped by him, his accusations, his camera angles, his cruelty. She paused. I want to reclaim the narrative. Gregory studied her. You sure? I am. Then, softer. This isn't just about me anymore. He nodded. Then we do it on your terms. The next morning, they reached out to Camille Torres, a seasoned journalist, known for long-form profiles, and her refusal to spin trauma into headlines. A Latina with a reputation for calling out institutional racism and telling stories the networks often buried. Camille responded in an hour. I'll come to the house, she said. No lights, no crew, just my recorder, my notebook, and an open mind. Maya agreed. The interview was set for Friday. That night, Maya stood by Jacob's crib, watching him breathe. He'd been quieter today, not anxious, just thoughtful. As if he'd felt the shift, too. She brushed a curl from his forehead. You're the bravest soul I've ever known. Behind her, Gregory stood in the doorway, arms folded. I keep thinking, he said, about what I would have done if he'd gotten in. Maya didn't turn. He didn't. That's what matters. Gregory walked closer. I failed to keep him off the grounds. You didn't fail, she said. He's not a burglar. He's a virus, slipping through cracks, feeding on doubt. Gregory's voice dropped. Then let's seal every crack. She finally turned to him. That starts with honesty. He looked at her, really looked, and then, slowly, he nodded. Whatever you say in that interview, he said, I'll stand beside it. No edits, no fear. Maya breathed in, and for the first time since the envelope arrived, she exhaled fully. He thought a picture would destroy me, she whispered. But what he didn't know is that I'm not afraid to be seen. Friday afternoon arrived under a cloudless sky, the kind of autumn blue that looked painted. The air was crisp but kind, as if the day itself had decided to be gentle. The Hunter estate had been prepped all morning, no in a performative way, but with quiet intention. Fresh tea was brewed. Cookies were laid out, the kind Jacob liked best, even though he wouldn't be attending. The living room was rearranged to feel more like a parlor than a palace. At exactly 1 p.m., Camille Torres arrived. She stepped out of a silver sedan in dark jeans, a fitted blazer, and no makeup, her gray-streaked hair pulled into a low bun. Her only accessory was a worn leather notebook and a recording device the size of a pack of gum. Maya greeted her at the door. You must be Maya, Camille said with a warm smile. Thank you for trusting me. I'm not doing this for clicks, Maya replied, her voice steady. I'm doing it so no one else tells my story for me. Good, Camille nodded. That's the only way it works. They sat in the sunlit corner of the study. Gregory stayed upstairs, giving Maya space, though he paced the hallway like a man awaiting a verdict. Camille pressed record. Let's start simple, she said. What would you like people to know about you? Maya folded her hands. My name is Maya Williams. I'm 29 years old. I'm a caregiver, a sister, a woman who's known both hunger and hope. She looked Camille in the eye. And I'm not sleeping with my employer. There was a silence, not awkward, not ashamed, just clear. Camille nodded once. Understood. Maya continued. I came to this house to work. Not for charity. Not for a fairy tale. I took care of a child no one else could reach. Not because I'm magic, but because I listened. Camille scribbled something, but her eyes stayed on Maya. What's it been like caring for a white child in this environment, with all eyes on you? Maya inhaled slowly. Some days it feels like a blessing. Other days, a battlefield. People assume, they always assume, that I'm unqualified, that I'm up to something, that I must have an angle, as if love couldn't possibly be the angle. And how do you feel about Mr. Hunter? There it was. Maya paused. She didn't blink, didn't dodge. He's a man learning to be a father, and I admire that. But I won't be reduced to a whisper in someone else's scandal. I've spent too long surviving to be dragged into someone's fantasy. Do you love him? Camille asked. The question sat in the air like a candle waiting to be lit. Maya's voice was quiet. That's not what this interview is for. Camille nodded, not pushing. Outside, Gregory watched from the upstairs window. Not listening, just watching. Maya's posture. Her calm, her strength. He knew better now than to speak for her. This was her war to win or walk away from. Camille wrapped up an hour later. "You've got fire," she said, closing her notebook. "But more than that, you've got clarity." "I've had to," Maya replied. "The world doesn't offer many soft landings for women like me." Camille turned off the recorder. "I'll run it by my editor, but you'll get to approve every word." Maya nodded. "Good, because if they change my voice, they change the whole point." That evening, after Jacob went to sleep and the house was finally quiet again, Maya stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled like cedar and dusk. Gregory joined her a few minutes later, 2 mugs in hand. He offered her one. "Chamomile," he said. "Mrs. Blake's idea." She took it. "Thanks." They stood side by side, watching stars blink alive overhead. "I read the transcript," he said softly. "You were incredible." "Dad, I was honest." "That too," he sipped. "You said you wouldn't be reduced to a whisper in someone else's scandal." "I meant it." "I know." He paused. "And I don't want you to be. Ever." She looked over at him. "So what now?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, he said, "We wait for the storm. And we stand still." She nodded, her voice soft. "Just like we taught Jacob." He smiled. "Exactly." Camille's article dropped 2 days later. It wasn't clickbait. It wasn't gossip. It was a portrait, titled simply, "Tell Them Who You Are." Maya Williams, in her own words. It ran in long form, 4,000 words, with no ads breaking up the paragraphs. It was picked up by 2 national outlets, shared on advocacy pages, quoted by therapists, shared by mothers, discussed in quiet corners of communities that knew the cost of silence. Gregory didn't post it. Maya didn't tweet it. But Mrs. Blake printed out the article, framed it, and hung it quietly above the fireplace. Jacob pointed to it one morning and said, "That's you." Maya smiled. "Yes, baby, that's me." He touched the glass. "Pretty," he whispered. And for the first time in her life, Maya believed it. 3 days after the article went live, the phone calls started. Not from tabloids, not from paparazzi. From people. A mother in Ohio who'd read Maya's story and said it felt like someone had finally spoken out loud what she'd carried in her chest for years. A teacher in Georgia who used the article to start a discussion on race, care, and social judgment in his high school civics class. Even a senator's aide reached out to say the piece had quietly shaken conversations in certain offices. Maya didn't answer the calls herself. Most went to voicemail. Gregory had a new assistant, Cheryl, screen everything. But even Cheryl, who had once been politely skeptical of Maya's place in the house, now addressed her with a deeper kind of respect. "Miss Williams," she said one morning, handing over a manila envelope, "you've started something." Maya raised an eyebrow. "I didn't plan to." Cheryl smiled. "That's usually when change actually begins." Jacob, oblivious to the noise outside, continued to bloom. He spent more time outside. More time with his hands in the earth. More time painting. One morning, Gregory found him drawing a picture of 3 stick figures. One tall, one with braids, and one smaller, smiling. "Is that us?" Gregory asked. Jacob nodded and said, "Safe." Gregory knelt beside him. "Who makes you feel safe?" Jacob pointed to Maya. Gregory placed a hand on his son's shoulder, but he didn't say, "Me too." He didn't have to. The emotion settled between them like warm sunlight. But the calm never lasts forever. That evening, the estate's private line rang. It was an older number, still connected to Gregory's original executive team. Mrs. Blake answered by habit. "It's him," she said, handing the phone to Gregory with a taut face. Gregory pressed the phone to his ear. "Speak." Derek's voice was calm. Too calm. "You think you won, Greg?" "I'm not playing," Gregory replied, "and neither is she." Derek chuckled. "You think printing some sentimental essay changes what she is? She's still the maid. You're still the idiot billionaire who forgot how this country really works." "I didn't forget," Gregory said coldly. "I just stopped playing to it." Derek's voice darkened. You better watch her. You don't know who's watching you. Then a click. Just like that. Gone. That night, security was doubled. Gregory didn't wait for another letter or shadow outside Maya's window. The estate perimeter was locked tighter than ever, with rotating patrols and a new facial recognition system installed at every entrance. But still, Gregory didn't sleep. He paced, and in the hallway, outside Jacob's door, he found Maya sitting in a chair, knees tucked to her chest, like a mother guarding a nursery. "You okay?" he whispered. "No," she said, "but I'm here." He sat down beside her. The silence between them was different now. Not heavy, not tense, just shared. "He called," Gregory said. Maya didn't ask who. She knew. "I'm not afraid of Derek," she said. "I'm afraid of what people like him leave behind in the hearts of others." "No." Gregory stared at the floor. "I can protect you from the man. I don't know if I can protect you from the world." She looked at him. Really looked. "Then don't protect me," she said. "Stand with me." And he nodded. The next day, Maya received an email. Subject: Conference Keynote Invitation. The National Association for Family Advocates was hosting a summit in D.C. They'd read Camille's article. They wanted Maya to be the keynote speaker for the closing night. She read the email 3 times. Gregory found her in the garden, staring at her phone. "You okay?" he asked. She held it out. He read it slowly, then looked up at her. "That's big." She nodded. "Too big?" "No," he said. "It's exactly your size." She smiled, but it was thin. "What if I freeze? What if they stare?" He stepped closer, then stare back. "They're not inviting you because you're polished. They're inviting you because you're real." She nodded, more to herself than to him. And then, from across the yard, Jacob's voice cut through. "Maya, come see my birdhouse." She turned toward him. "Be right there." As she walked away, Gregory watched her go strong, graceful. Still carrying the weight of too many years, but no longer alone. The days ticked down toward the summit. Camille's article continued to ripple, finding its way into newsletters, blog posts, and even academic journals. Someone from a major podcast asked for an interview. Maya said no. She didn't want to become a symbol. She wanted to stay a soul. Meanwhile, Derek had gone silent again. No threats, no sightings, but Gregory knew better than to think it was over. The storm always circles back, quieter, smarter. But this time, they weren't running. They were rooted, like the garden Jacob built with his bare hands, like the woman who held him through every storm, like the man who was finally ready to choose truth over silence. And as the wind picked up that evening, carrying the scent of cedar and firewood, Maya stood on the porch, arms crossed, eyes open. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was watching, ready. Washington, D.C., smelled like ambition. The sleek glass of government buildings, the clean stone of monuments, the rush of black cars and briefcases, it all pulsed with a quiet urgency, as if even the air knew history was always being made somewhere nearby. Maya stepped into the hotel lobby with her shoulders square and her chin high, even though her stomach felt like it had swallowed a clock. The National Association for Family Advocates had spared no detail: floral arrangements, a grand ballroom, name cards in gold script, but none of it impressed her. She was looking for something else. Jacob's voice saying, "Safe." Gregory's voice saying, "Exactly your size." Her own voice whispering, "I belong here." A woman in a blazer approached with a clipboard and a wide, warm smile. "Miss Williams, welcome. We've set you up with a private room to prepare. Sound check in 20 minutes. The closing keynote begins in 1 hour." Maya thanked her. Her voice didn't shake, but her fingers did just slightly, just enough for her to fold them into fists. This wasn't just a speech. This was the table, the one no one had saved her a seat at. Until now, in the green room, Gregory poured her water and laid out a notepad, though she hadn't written down a single word of her speech. Jacob was back home with Mrs. Blake, tucked safely into the bedtime routine, though he'd tried to stay up and watch Mama on the computer. "I can't believe you came," she said, eyeing him through the mirror. He shrugged. "I wasn't about to let you walk into a storm alone." "It's not a storm," she replied. He smiled. "No, you're right. It's a spotlight, and you were born to walk into it." She turned. "Am I?" "Yes." His voice dropped. "Because you're the only one who can light it up without burning down everything around you." For a long second, neither of them spoke. Then a knock. "They're ready for you." The ballroom was dimmed, the stage softly lit. 1,000 chairs, maybe more. Some filled with therapists, others with teachers. A few parents with children who rocked in silence or flapped softly at the lights. Maya walked to the podium in heels she almost didn't wear, in a navy blue dress that made her look like the future, not the help. The applause was polite, expectant. She placed her hands on the podium. Then she began. "I'm not an expert," she said. "I'm not a doctor. I'm not an academic. I'm not the founder of an organization or the CEO of a think tank. What I am is someone who stayed." The room hushed. "I stayed when a 2-year-old boy threw a wooden block at my eye. I stayed when he screamed so loud the neighbors called the cops. I stayed when I was told that I was just the help, and that my presence might confuse the child or the father." She glanced down, took a breath. "I am Maya Williams. I'm a black woman. I'm a caregiver. I am not a mistake in a rich man's house. I am not a rumor. I am not your scandal." And then, gently, "I am his person." A few gasps, some murmurs, but no interruption. She pressed on. "Jacob isn't a diagnosis. He's a child. A brilliant, complicated, extraordinary child who just needed the world to speak his language. And for a long time, that world didn't. It shouted at him, tried to mold him, tried to fix what was never broken." She stepped out from behind the podium now, the cordless mic in her hand. "I didn't teach Jacob how to be normal. I taught him how to feel safe, and that safety, when it finally came, let him become who he already was." She paused. "Some of you are here today with letters after your names. Some of you have theories and research and protocols. And that matters. It does. But so does the person who holds the hand during the meltdown, the one who rocks the child to sleep, the one who doesn't quit." She let her eyes scan the crowd. "To every caregiver who's been mistaken for the babysitter. To every black woman who's been called a nanny when she's really a lifeline. To every person who stayed when it wasn't glamorous or easy or safe. This moment is ours." A standing ovation rose like a wave. Maya didn't flinch. She simply nodded once, then walked off the stage, her spine straight and her soul somehow both heavy and light. Backstage, Gregory waited. "You didn't use your notes," he said. "I didn't need them," she replied. "They're going to ask you for more," he said. "More speeches, more interviews, maybe even a book." "Then they better understand," she said. "I'll speak, but I'm not a symbol. I'm a person, a mother figure, a truth teller." He looked at her, eyes soft. "You're the strongest person I've ever met." She looked up. "Don't say that unless you mean to stand behind it. Because the world's going to push back. And they'll push you too." I'm not moving," he said simply. And in that quiet space between them, something sealed. Not a promise of romance. Not yet. But of respect. Of alignment. Of a shared fight. They flew home the next morning. The clouds below looked like Jacob's paintings, soft, swirled, full of unspoken meaning. When they landed, Mrs. Blake met them at the gate with a smile. "Jacob's in the garden," she said. "Been there since sunrise. Said he's waiting for Mama to come home with her superhero cape." "Now," Maya laughed, the kind of laugh that shook loose the last 5 years of being overlooked. Gregory took her hand, just for a second. And for the first time in a long time, Maya believed that maybe, just maybe, the world could learn to see her the way Jacob did. Not as someone who fit into their idea of help, but as someone who had found her place at the table and brought her own chair. It started with a scratch, barely audible, a whisper of metal against glass. Maya was in the kitchen, rinsing berries for Jacob's snack, when the sound stopped her mid-motion. She turned toward the patio door. Nothing. Just the wind pressing lightly against the glass. Leaves stirred on the porch. A squirrel darted across the fence line. She shook her head. Probably nothing. But she locked the door anyway. Later that evening, after Jacob fell asleep in his usual nest of stuffed whales and fleece blankets, Maya sat in the study, scrolling through photos from DC. She hadn't posted anything publicly, but she saved the ones Gregory took backstage raw, unfiltered, her eyes still wide with adrenaline. She looked different, like a woman who had outgrown the walls that used to contain her. Gregory walked in, holding 2 mugs of mint tea. "You've been quiet," he said. "Just thinking," she replied. "About what's next?" He set the mug down beside her. "You scared me up there. You said things people in my world don't say out loud." She smiled slightly. "Maybe your world needs more of that." Saturday, maybe it needs more of you. For a moment, the silence between them felt charged. Then, crack. A sharp snap echoed outside. Gregory was on his feet instantly. Maya's eyes flew to the window. Another snap. Closer. Then, nothing. Gregory flicked the study lamp off and moved to the window, peering through the slats. "Security's doing hourly rounds," he whispered. "They should have passed this side 10 minutes ago." Maya stood behind him. "I locked all the doors." He turned. "Stay with Jacob. I'll check the yard." She grabbed his arm. "Gregory, I'll be careful." 5 minutes later, Gregory and 2 guards swept the back lawn. Flashlights cut through the garden, bouncing off tomato cages and rose bushes. The wind had picked up, brushing branches against windows and carrying a scent of rain. Then one of the guards paused. "Sir," he said, crouching. On the patio step, just beside the sliding glass door, sat a silver Zippo lighter, engraved with a single word. "Remember." Gregory's stomach turned cold. He picked it up with a gloved hand. No fingerprints, just that one word, like a whisper from the past. Inside, Maya paced. She had Jacob's baby monitor in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, tucked just behind her thigh. Old instincts, survival instincts, the kind of quiet panic you learn when you grow up knowing no one's coming to save you. Gregory returned, face grim. "It's him," she said flatly. He nodded. "No doubt. He's not going to stop, is he?" "No." Her shoulders straightened. "Then we don't either." The next morning, Maya woke to a quiet house. Too quiet. She slipped out of bed and checked Jacob's room. He was still asleep, hugging his whale. But on the kitchen table, there was a folded piece of paper. Her name on the front, Gregory's handwriting. "Maya, I'm going to Boston for 48 hours. There's a man who once worked with Derek's firm. He's scared, and he's ready to talk. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd try to stop me. But I need this. We need this. No more hiding. No more waiting for Derek to make the next move. It's time to end it. Gee." Maya sat down slowly, the note trembling in her hands. She knew he meant it. He was going to dig up everything, even if it buried him too. In Boston, the air was colder, harsher. Gregory wore a baseball cap low over his eyes and sat across from a man who looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "Why now?" Gregory asked. The man Kyle sipped his coffee and said, "Because Derek's not scared anymore. That should terrify everyone. He's targeting my son." "I know," Kyle said. "And if you don't stop him now, this won't end with photos. He's going to come after your estate, your business, your name." "Nah." Gregory leaned in. "Then give me what I need." Kyle reached into his coat. A flash drive, emails, voice memos, legal documents. A timeline of his harassment campaigns. He's been doing this to people for years. Blackmail, slander, intimidation. But you're the first one with enough power to fight back. Gregory took the drive. "Then I will." Back at the estate, Maya kept her phone close. Each hour Gregory didn't call added another knot in her stomach. Mrs. Blake made tea. Jacob painted. But Maya's mind kept drifting. Finally, just before midnight, her phone buzzed. "Gregory, I have what we need," he said. "I'll be home by morning." She closed her eyes, exhaled. "Come back safe." "I will." And he meant it. But just as she hung up, the security lights outside flared one by one. Motion sensors. Backyard. Side entrance, guest wing hallway. Maya didn't hesitate. She ran to Jacob's room, locked the door, grabbed the panic remote. The alarm blared across the estate, shaking walls and waking every soul inside. And in the distance, just before the sirens came, she thought she saw a figure. Thin, tall, waiting, watching. But this time, she didn't freeze. This time, Maya stood between the boy and the dark. Because you don't survive storms by hiding from them. You survive by meeting them at the door. The sirens came fast. Blue lights cut through the trees and painted the house in shades of urgency. Security swarmed the yard while local deputies fanned out with radios, combing every inch of the property. Maya stood barefoot on the hardwood floor of Jacob's room, her hand pressed flat against the door. Inside, Jacob clung to her leg. His voice was small. "Bad sound." She bent, smoothing his curls. "It's okay, baby. It's just the house making sure we're safe." He blinked slowly, then buried his face in her sweater. He didn't scream. He didn't hit. He just held on, and Maya did the same. Gregory's flight landed just before dawn. He drove straight from the airport, ignoring the voicemail from his lawyer, the emails from investors, the text from his publicist. None of it mattered now. When he pulled up to the estate, the security gate was open, but 2 guards stood on alert. "Maya?" he called as he rushed inside. She met him at the base of the stairs. His chest heaved not from running, but from the fear that had sat on his heart for the past 6 hours. "She's okay," said Mrs. Blake gently, appearing from the hallway. "We all are." He pulled Maya into his arms. For the first time, she let herself collapse against him. "I know," she whispered. "Me too." He looked at her, eyes sharp now. "Did he get in?" "No, but he wanted to remind us he could." Gregory's jaw clenched. "Not anymore." Later that day, a press release hit the wires. Gregory Hunter, CEO of Hunter & Sloan Industries, accuses former partner of harassment, racketeering, and defamation. Attached was a document dump. Emails, photos, time, stamped surveillance footage, financial records, non-disclosure violations, all linked to Derek Vance. But what made it go viral wasn't the data. It was the video, a clip taken from a private security feed, dated a month ago. It showed a woman, Maya, kneeling beside a young boy in the middle of a meltdown, whispering to him softly, over and over, "You are safe, you are safe, you are safe." And eventually, the boy stopped screaming, and he smiled. The image froze on that frame. Then Gregory's voice, off camera, "This is who they wanted you to believe was a threat." It was raw, it was unpolished, and it burned through the internet like wildfire. 3 days later, Derek Vance was arrested. Not for trespassing, for conspiracy, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice. Turns out, people talk when they realize the shield of wealth no longer protects them. Turns out, truth travels farther when it's carried by someone who has nothing left to lose. That night, Gregory found Maya outside. She was sitting on the porch swing, Jacob curled beside her, fast asleep. The stars blinked overhead like old promises. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, lowering himself beside her. "I needed to breathe." "Zen. You still can't?" "No," she said softly, "but it's getting easier." He looked at Jacob, peaceful in her arms. "You changed everything," he said. "No," she whispered. "He did." Gregory nodded, because someone gave him the freedom to. They sat in silence for a while, letting the wind speak. Then Maya asked, "What now?" He looked at her. "Whatever you want." She chuckled. "Dangerous thing to offer a woman like me. I'm counting on it." A pause. "Gregory," she began, her voice careful. "I know," he said. "We don't need to name it. Not yet. I still work for you." "Not anymore," he said. "You've never just worked for me." She looked at him, not with caution, not with fear, but with the clarity that comes after surviving. "I won't be your secret," she said. "I wouldn't dream of hiding you." Another silence. Then Jacob stirred, opened his eyes, looked between them. "Home," he mumbled. Maya kissed his forehead. "Yes, baby. We're home," Gregory whispered. "All of us." 1 month later, Maya stood in front of a city council panel, advocating for better protections for in-home caregivers. 2 months later, she founded a nonprofit called Open Hands, focused on training, support, and legal advocacy for Black nannies and caregivers across the country. 3 months later, Jacob was enrolled in a progressive learning center with full inclusion. He came home every day with paint on his fingers and new words in his heart, and every night Maya tucked him in, not as an employee, as his anchor, as his joy, as his family. On a quiet afternoon, she stood in the garden Jacob once built, watching him chase butterflies near the tomato vines. Gregory came outside, holding 2 lemonades. She took hers. He looked at her, Then at Jacob. You were the first person to reach him, he said. I didn't understand it back then. I do now. Oh. She smiled, sipping her drink. He reached me too. He stepped closer. You're not going anywhere, are you? She shook her head. Not unless you push me. Never. Another pause. Then he said, You know, I've been thinking about building something. Something big. A home. One with a porch. A swing. Maybe 3 bedrooms. She looked at him sideways. You proposing a blueprint? He laughed. Not yet. Just wondering if you'd help me design it. She looked at him, really looked, and nodded. Yes, she said, but only if it has a window seat. Deal. The fire didn't win. The whisper campaign didn't win. And love, quiet, unsensational, earned love sat gently between them, not as a reward, but as a reflection of everything they survived. Because the truth is, you don't have to burn down the world to change it. Sometimes, you just have to stand still and let the light in. Sometimes, the greatest strength is not in speaking the loudest, but in standing still when the world wants you to disappear. Maya's journey reminds us that justice often begins in silence, in the overlooked, in the dismissed, in the ones no one sees coming. Her strength wasn't in grand gestures, but in staying, in listening, in believing that compassion is more powerful than reputation. This story teaches us that truth doesn't always roar, it often whispers. And when it's finally heard, it changes everything.